Chief, is this a problem? I mean, was it a lot of speeding, right?
I
don't think it was as much as we were thinking. Could have been a speed show or help reduce that.
I will now call this meeting to order at 5:00 p.m. And I need a motion, we're going into executive session to talk personnel.
Do you want to do the baths first? Can you do that and open?
Oh,
Let's get rid of Josh first.
oh, okay.
We'll do drug policy if we
Okay.
can. Drug and alcohol policy.
Okay. We're gonna, go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
Okay.
Take it.
Josh is going to talk to you a little bit about more specifics about the PLUS system. Okay? But in the past 6 months, we've learned more about drug and alcohol testing and policies than probably we wanted to know. But we're all satisfied that we follow the rules and all those kind of things. The town currently has, for every employee, a one-time mulligan on drug and alcohol policy. If somebody comes to work with alcohol on their breath or drugs in their system, and we test them, they get a second chance. Everybody does. Bus drivers, mechanics. I can't say police officers, but we would have to deal with that on individual cases. But the average employee, me, Josh, everybody, okay, would get one time. They would be able to go and complete a substance abuse plan under the guidance of a substance abuse professional who would ultimately write me a letter that they can return or not return, okay, to work. And if they return to work, they have to pass a test, a return to work test, or return to duty test, and they're subject to 6 additional follow-up tests at any time at the discretion of the town. Okay? So, that's how it is now, okay? Josh is gonna talk to you about, because the federal folks are a little iffy about us having a 2-strike rule. I think that they're more interested, if their money's gonna be put into the bus shop, and Josh is gonna explain this, they want a 1-strike rule at the bus shop, which would apply to the mechanics, would apply to the administrative people at the bus shop, and would apply to the bus drivers. Okay? I'm not asking for the modification to the rest of the town. I wanna keep 2 strikes, if I can. Okay? And I must say, police is probably a little different. We have to check circumstances and that sort of thing, but you certainly don't want a police officer who comes to work with marijuana in their system or something like that. There's a problem. But for the garbage department, the street department, me, people like that, we do a second chance.
What about if you're driving a vehicle? So,
Second chance, unless you're a bus driver. And what he's proposing, unless you're a bus driver or you're a mechanic that may operate a piece of equipment, it all boils down to, is recently we've had to ask some questions at the state and get guidance from them on drug and alcohol policy, and they were not as happy about a 2-strike rule for those employees who are compensated by Department of Rail and Public Transport, ultimately federal funds that feeds into them. Hit me if I'm saying something wrong.
Well, have we spoken to Ms. Bacon in reference to if you have a second time offense?
Yeah, she was in.
As to if something were to happen in public, somebody's hurt,
Well,
whatever, does it open us up for more of
I think
a liability?
Barbara can relay that we met several times in closed session over the past 6 months about it. I think it's preferable, liability-wise, as a 1-strike deal. I don't think there's any doubt. It's preferable, any attorney or anybody that's concerned with liability and those kinds of things, of course, 1-strike rule is better. You know?
I know,
Add a little more on the human element, yeah, and give somebody a chance if they mess up.
I know fella I know the job that I just retired from, it was 1 strike.
1-strike.
Especially when you're dealing with, well, in my instance, it was government equipment. But here you got town equipment. And it would look kind of bad, you know, if this person, say, if you had a guy driving a garbage truck, this guy goes out and hits somebody. And then here it comes up. And you tell me if I'm wrong, 6 months later, this guy's involved in another accident. And it shows up on their record.
Liability-wise, it is preferable for
One.
1-strike. Now, I think the federal government is saying, or the individuals, the folks that from the state who are working with the Fed, We're one of the very few bus systems, if not the only bus system,
The only one in the state.
only one in the state that gives a second chance. Every other federally funded or reimbursed transit system in the state of Virginia has a one-strike rule. We have a two-strike. So Josh is keenly interested in making his portion of things, mechanics, because they work on the buses, Josh because he's in charge of the buses, and the drivers because they operate the buses, have a one-strike rule. I haven't gone as far as asking for that, and I think the previous council talked a little bit about it, Barbara, you may remember. I don't think it was universally agreed upon that they wanted to go to a one-strike deal. Okay? I am asking for you to consider what Josh is presenting now, and if you want to expand it, fine, we don't want to expand it. But I'll tell you how we do drug and alcohol testing so everybody knows. Okay? Sadly, I had to find out in Amelia 20 years ago when we adopted a drug and alcohol policy that government has to have a warrant to mandate a drug test. That is a search. It must be warranted. Government may not have warrantless searches. So your policy can only apply to those employees that are considered safety sensitive. Me, him, not her. She doesn't do anything but operate a computer and a calculator. So in the town of Blackstone employees, safety sensitive employees are pretty much everybody but the ladies that work in here. I don't know about Stephanie, she may not be a safety sensitive employee. She knows. Administrative people, and I'm not saying ladies, we men too. Administrative folks that aren't in what is considered a safety sensitive position may not be forcibly tested on a random basis. They may be tested if we have a reasonable suspicion or pre-employment and that kind of thing, but they are not in that random pool. I'm in there, Josh is in there, Chief is in there, okay? And all the other drivers, operators, equipment. That separates us from the private sector. Private company can say everybody. Public sector, we can only test those that are safe, which is the predominance of people in Blackstone. But there's 4 positions on the other side: Yvonne, Jennifer, Daniel, Allison, and Jessica. They can't be forcibly tested, and I believe Stephanie falls in that same category. They cannot be
And then
controlled.
your office personnel are non-safety as well, correct? But with this policy, would they be subject to
There's-
the?
It's all kind of complicated with the transit system, because we actually have more stringent rules placed on us being FTA and DRPT funded, so they have a broader scope of what's considered safety sensitive. So one of those things that will qualify me and Barbara as being safety sensitive is that we control the movement and direction of a bus. Like if we had to direct it from a detour or something like that, that's considered safety sensitive. Janet Matthews would not fall under that because she has no involvement at all with the bus system. Her only duties is to assist me in my projects and finance, invoices and stuff like that. So everybody in that department is covered except Janet Matthews.
So if somebody says the cronies that work for Phil up at Town Hall don't have to take drug tests, Phil takes drug tests, he's subject to it. The ladies that work in this building
Or
are
not.
not safety sensitive, and we can't mandate random testing. Now, Jennifer comes in, slurred speech and all those kind of, and I suspect I am entitled then to say, hey, wait a minute, we're gonna go test. All right? But it doesn't fall in that random. We have pre-employment, everybody that works for the town, from the lowest paid person to the highest paid person, passes a drug test before their offer of employment is always contingent on negative alcohol.
But for instance, if she came in with a slurred speech, would you immediately send her to be drug tested?
I would probably carry her right across the
Right.
street.
Well, would you assume that, she could be having a stroke or something that caused her to be slurred?
The heck of it is I'm not a medical professional.
Uh-huh.
You gotta carry, otherwise I could make people take breathalyzer. I'm not trained. You gotta have somebody, and they may ask her, ma'am, are you feeling well today? Have you been taking medication? What medication have you taken? And a substance abuse professional can tell if there's a reasonable explanation of why she's slurred speech, other than drunk. So everybody takes a test when they get started. That's a drug test. Everybody, except for the non-safety sensitive people, are in a pool, okay? And that pool of people, there's a quarterly random test. That quarterly test is drawn by our consultant. I don't draw it, Jennifer Daniel doesn't drive. Those people that are supposed to take the test every month or every quarter, and the alternate chosen, in case somebody's on vacation or something like that, we have an alternate list, we start at the top and kick down. That list is selected by off-site third party, okay? What they do, and what I don't wanna have happen, is everybody know when the testing is, okay? So there's only one person in Blackstone that knows when the test is gonna be, and that's the town clerk. I don't know when testing is gonna be, Jennifer tells me. I don't know. She communicates directly with them, and they call her and say, all right, we got your quarterly pool. We're gonna be there on Tuesday the 7th, and Jennifer will tell the staff guys that morning or the night before to have these following people there. I don't know, and that's a fact, when the testing is.
I don't believe she's told who's picked yet until the morning of, but she knows it, when it'll be held, but she never knows who's on the list until the day of.
Okay. All right? And we've narrowed it down because we want only one person to know.
Right.
Because we've had people say, well, it just so happened he had a dentist appointment that day and he didn't have to take the drug test, and why is that? Only one person knows, so nobody gets told ahead of time. And if somebody refuses a test, then we consider it to be a positive test. Okay? We had that years ago at the shop. All right? So we got pre-employment, we got drug screening, okay? We have post-accident with moving violations, okay? And we're gonna give you copies of these personnel policies, and most of this is in there. Okay? And then we have a reasonable suspicion test. Jennifer comes in with slurred speech. I would step out and give her the medical folks, and they can answer the right questions. Oh, well, yeah, I've had to take Dilaudid for a bad toothache or whatever. Okay? So they can explain it to them. And then we have return to work testing and follow-up testing. That's if you tested positive the first time and you come back to work, you're subject to additional tests. Okay? That's what we do now. Everybody gets 2 strikes. Okay? Only if you complete your substance abuse professionals treatment plan after the first one can you come back for the second one.
And who pays for that?
The employee pays for that. But typically, if you look at the back of the town's employees' insurance card, they have a thing called an EAP. If you ever look at our Anthem card, there's an EAP number, Employee Assistance Program, and that's what it is. Insurance will pay the predominance of it. Okay? Doesn't mean it's in-house counseling. It may just be, you gotta come to 6 meetings. You may have to go to VASAP. You may have to do whatever. But there's a plan put together by a counselor or a substance abuse professional, and they've gotta successfully complete that before I get a letter saying they can go. That's how we do it now. Now we'll be quiet, and Josh can talk to you about the bus and why he wants to go from 2 strikes to 1 strike at the bus shop.
Just to give you a little history of how this sort of thing came up, right before our, like Philip was saying, our 6 months of really having to get into this and figure out some things and all that, the FTA made some updates to their mandated drug and alcohol policy language. So if you have the sample policy in front of you, this is an automatically generated document, and anything in bold text is subject to how Blackstone has it. Everything else, the unbolded text, is FTA mandated policy that we have to have as a transit system. And the language that changed in that, one of the things, the biggest thing was on the 4th page under section 3, the 4th bullet point there, it changed its language from opioids to opioids. That was the biggest thing. So currently we have a policy that mirrors exactly this, and on page 4 under section 4, treatment and discipline, the one before you says employment will be immediately terminated. The one that we currently have now is a second chance policy. And so the reason I'm asking for the change with this change is because of what Philip was mentioning. The FTA and DRPT strongly suggest that we go that route because DRPT was explained to me, and our drug and alcohol program compliance officer was saying there's really no such thing as a second chance or second, third, fourth, fifth. Like, it's really left up to the circumstances and stuff like that. If you go to a zero tolerance policy, it eliminates all the liability of somebody causing an accident, being the cause of an accident, or the inefficiency of having that in your workforce. So that's the main thing for me, is just the safety and security concern of it, and that really we are one of 10% nationwide transit system that has a second chance policy. The only one in the state of Virginia. So this zero tolerance is becoming across the board over the last 10 years. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I guess the biggest thing for me is just, the safety and the liability of the transit system, our riders, workers, and people and all that. So, and obviously the push from the FTA and DRPT to do this.
You want to see a zero tolerance?
Yes,
in
ma'am.
place.
Mhm.
What's your time schedule that you need a response to give to DRPT? Is this something you need a response on immediately, or?
Well, going back to the language change, we had to do that by January 1. That was mandated by the FTA to have an updated policy change in the language. So we're current as of now, and we're actually getting ready to possibly be audited by the FTA. They're going through their triennial drug and alcohol audit. We haven't been selected, but Richmond was telling me that because they're coming to Richmond, we're so close to Richmond to be expected to be audited. So we don't have a time frame. We're current. This is whenever we can get it. So.
Well, I'm in favor of the zero tolerance.
Townwide, or for what his request is?
What he's requesting for the bus shop.
Be purely bad.
There's a question about townwide or not townwide. Either way is fine. I don't think anybody's gonna protest it and all that sort of thing. I'm just not asking you to do that right now. But if the committee wants to study it and work on it.
I think
you need
we
to
should
do it.
study it
We'll
because I
study
don't see how you could easily do it for one
Why did not do it for the other?
and do it for the other. Because the liability is there. And if you have someone who has tested positive, was taken out of circulation, gone to treatment or whatever, and still came back, and then something happened down the road, well, you knew this person had this problem before, but yet you put them back on the road.
I know what Tessa's gonna tell you. She said she's gonna err on the side of caution and say, if you're asking me if you're returning or giving you guidance on liability, man, zero tolerance is the trick.
And I think your federal guy, he notated the reason why they all were going to it is the studies have shown more than likely they tested positive once they were repeat offenders.
And
Right, there was-
Isn't that correct? Like you were saying, they did in-depth studies.
And I feel it would probably be better for us, I didn't mean to cut you off. I feel it would be better for us as a whole, that if we're gonna make that type of decision for one, we ought to just go
Do the
ahead and
whole-
contemplate doing it for the
the
whole
whole
thing
town.
at the same time.
You good with it? And
That sounds good.
There was one case, though, that, like Jennifer was saying, there was a transit agency out west. I can't remember exactly where it was, but somebody actually tested 4 times before the transit system actually decided to terminate them. So, I mean, it's kind of going back to what they're saying. There's really no such thing as a second chance, a second, third, fourth, and all that. So,
Or anyone who is in a position where they're gonna have a CDL or, drive any type of vehicle, anything, has a responsibility, as we do, sitting up here for
and I
that.
think it was also important to point out too that because we're FTA and DRPT underneath that umbrella, that we do have more strict policies on us in place. So it just makes it cleaner to have a zero tolerance policy because of those extra barriers and stuff.
And that being the case, anytime we open up to any type of federal, state grants or anything of that nature for anything involving transportation, is that any of the,
well, a lot of our grants do have a drug-free workplace requirement that the federal government requires you work in those type of things. That's probably the most I know. There's usually a drug, if we get East End grant, you guys will ultimately adopt a drug-free workplace policy or update the one we have in place, because I think to be a grant recipient, we've got to provide a drug-free workplace.
Do y'all wanna study it anymore, or just we're gonna do the whole town zero tolerance?
I,
So that's what the
Does-
council says, and if the whole council's good, then you're good, but,
I would, I mean, being in law enforcement for 20 years, knowing the importance of, I would stand with a zero tolerance townwide.
So what do we have to do, bring it before the council?
Yeah, after
full
we,
council
Yes.
has to vote on
after we
it.
vote on it,
It would be a modification of our personnel policy.
Yeah.
And, we would need to come up with draft up. Once you do this, once you make in your motion, that we draft up revisions to the personnel policy for presentation to the council on the 27th. And then if it's the committee, then if you recommend to go into zero tolerance townwide, then we'll take it to them.
You wanna make the motion?
I would.
Go ahead.
I make the motion.
I second.
Second.
I second.
We've had a motion and a second to go zero tolerance to take it before the council to vote on.
It may be two documents, one for him and his bus system policies, and then the actual personnel policy itself. We'll get some modifications, a copy of which is available to you.
And,
You may have one of these already.
and pretty much townwide, anybody that has an operator's license, whether it be a standard driver's license or a CDL, understands that if they go to the doctor for anything and get prescribed any type of opiate or anything, they're to let a supervisor know.
They're supposed to let us know if they have some. I don't want to know that. I want them to notify, perhaps in closed session, this committee or something, or a medical professional of some kind. HIPAA rules, and you're a nurse, you know HIPAA rules.
Absolutely.
If I know about it, I probably don't want to know about it. We probably have to find the correct one. It may be included in that personnel policy, who we're supposed to tell, or who they're supposed to tell. And it may be town manager. Ooh, I hope it's not.
Okay.
Who else would be the personnel director?
All right, Josh. You have anything else?
Just one additional thing, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Also included for consideration of adoption is a rehire policy for the Blackstone area bus. We've had an issue in the past where we have an employee that has resigned numerous times within her employment and has come back within like a week and have decided that she changed her mind, she wants to come back. I think that if we kind of put a framework in place to try to eliminate that, it just causes unnecessary confusion, paperwork, and all this stuff that I would like to try to reduce or eliminate.
That's not acceptable.
Not acceptable.
In my opinion.
Okay.
It's because they make a habit of it. You know, quit the job and then think they can come back the next week.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
That's not acceptable.
Yeah, and like I said, it just causes us unneeded time away from other stuff, confusion, paperwork, all this stuff. So.
So what y'all think?
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
Either you want the job or you don't. That's simple.
So this be recommended we bring that policy again to council.
Right.
Council
Okay.
votes on everything that you guys do, so
Okay.
it'll be on the August agenda.
I make a motion that we bring this before council on rehire.
I second.
Have a motion and a second.
And that was my last item.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yes.
Now we go put that. We have to have a motion to enter into closed session to discuss personnel matters specific to compensation for the chief of police and compensation for that lead water and sewer operator.
Okay, so move. So move what you said.
Close the door behind.
Would do.